What is your message to the government?
You murdered my son twice. You let the Hamas take my son on October 7th, and you killed my son on December 14th. They are not our leaders. They're thinking only on themselves.
That was the father of one of the Israeli hostages who was shot and killed by the IDF. The hostage's name was Avi Shamriz. His father, Avi, clearly is furious with Benjamin Netanyahu, the IDF, and the current Israeli government over the fact that they failed to keep Israelis safe on October 7th, and the fact that they failed to get his son home safe after he was kidnapped and held captive by Hamas militants. Now, here's more from this incredibly heartbreaking interview.
He was serving in the army in special forces. Alon is a brave guy.
Avi Shamriz believes his son plotted an escape from Hamas tunnels along with 2 other hostages.
If you see the sign, all is his handwriting.
The sign that says SOS?
Yes, this is him.
That's his writing?
Yes. The army did not act as an army. They act like murderers. They just shoot to kill.
It's not just grief.
I'm really angry. I ask the government stop the shooting, and look what's happened.
Absolutely heartbreaking. And obviously, he's not the only one, Cenk, who's going through this, because there were 3 Israeli hostages who were shot and killed by the IDF, including Samir Halaka, who unfortunately was, according to the IDF, mistaken as a threat and also killed. Here is the mother of the Israeli hostage. Let's hear from her.
And at Summer's family home, his mother, Layla, welcomes visitors. Including an Israeli politician. We can only ask for your forgiveness, he says. Layla says they're all 3 heroes. They went out, escaped, they did all the work, just waiting for you to come get them. She tells him, I will not forgive anyone.
You did not accept his condolences. Why?
Because these words came late, she says. Later, describing how she keeps playing in her head her son's final moments. Their call for help, the white flag, this is what I keep seeing, she tells us. I am hurting.
I can't imagine what they're going through. And I can't imagine what the family members of the remaining hostages in the Gaza Strip are currently going through as the aerial bombardments continue, as you see artillery fire, you see the civilian death toll go up day after day. It's heartbreaking, and keep in mind, there are still around 130 hostages in Gaza, assuming that everyone is still alive. Cenk.
So first of all, this is why we tell you all the time, do not make assumptions about civilians. Oh, the Israelis think this, the Palestinians think that. No, first of all, we're all human beings. And yes, we get affected by the situation we're in, the tribes we're in, and the conflicts between them. But we're all human, we're the same. And in Israel, there are a lot of protests of Netanyahu and a lot of dissent. And so I don't think they're a democracy because they occupy 5 million Palestinians and don't give them rights. But within Israel, there is real dissent. There real voting. There is a real judiciary and actually an excellent press. So keep Avi Shamriz in mind. You hear what he said? It wasn't just about his son. He said, this is not how you act as an army. He said, this is the actions of murderers. Now he's saying that about his own government. Now, of course, his son was killed by that same government, and obviously he's upset and he says it. But he's not just sticking up for the hostages, but for the Palestinians. So what kind of an army operates like this, where you just shoot without asking any questions, without knowing who they are, and in this case, they happen to be Israelis. Now, how many cases do you think they were Palestinians and it got no coverage at all? And there's 20,000 dead in Gaza. We know over 8,000 are children. We know over 6,400 are women. But how many men did they kill and go, yeah, they were probably Hamas? And they didn't even bother checking. That's why this is a huge news story, because they killed 3 Israelis. To To what degree is it standard operating procedure for them to shoot first and maybe ask questions later, and oftentimes never ask questions, never find out who they killed? My guess is the answer is a lot of times. And by the way, where do we get that information? Oftentimes, former IDF, former intelligence officers in Israel. It's a great write-up in an Israeli publication today. A former intelligence officer saying they're now using AI to do bombings so that they've increased the targets, but they're not necessarily connected to Hamas. And they'll see a residential building and they'll just say that's a power target with no connection to Hamas, and they'll bomb it. And he called it a mass assassination factory. And that's a former Israeli intelligence officer.
Cenk, I want to go back. I totally agree with you, but I want to go back to what you said a little earlier about, don't make the mistake of generalizing about any group of people, and that includes Israelis, right? I think because of the horrific videos and images that we see coming out of Gaza, I personally haven't done a good enough job in kind of talking about the reality on the ground in Israel, because while I do believe that the majority of Israelis are supportive of the military effort in Gaza, and that's according to public opinion polling, there are so many wonderful people in Israel who have spoken out against what the IDF is doing, and they're really putting a lot on the line. I mean, the possibility of losing friends and family over their protests over what the government and the IDF is doing. And so when I hear rhetoric like, oh, all Israelis are settler colonialists, including the babies, and they're all evil. No, I reject that language through and through. That's hateful rhetoric. They would find it incredibly hateful if they heard from people drawing these broad generalizations about Palestinians, referring to them all as Hamas, as some Israeli politicians have, and it's deplorable and disgusting. But I feel the same way about Israelis, and I actually want to highlight a young Israeli, a young man, he's an 18-year-old who has decided to really take a stand. And even though he's been drafted into the IDF, he is willing to lose quite a bit in refusing to be drafted. And so he had an interview with Novara Media today, and I really appreciated this conversation. I want to give him a lot of credit. His name is Tal Mitnick. He's a wonderful guy, and so is his family, who's supportive of his decision here. Let's hear what he had to say.
What led you to the decision to refuse national service?
What led me was the realization that it's not just a couple soldiers that are bad soldiers or that enact violent occupation on Palestinians, but it's actually a whole system of violence, of pulling people into the army and making them work for the occupation and for oppressing Palestinians.
So what's actually going to happen on your enlistment date? Can you talk me through it?
My enlistment date is next week on Tuesday, and I will come and declare that I'm not serving. And then I will go up on trial in front of a military judge, which is usually a general. And he will sentence me to time in military jail, prison.
I mean, so much love and solidarity to him. I mean, that is not an easy decision to make, but this is a decision he's making because he feels that it's in his conscience to avoid serving in the IDF. He doesn't agree with their military practices.
Yeah, the last couple of things here. The whole point of Israel is to be a safe haven. And as long as we never get to peace, we're never going to get to have a safe haven in Israel. And so people like Netanyahu are not representing Israel's interests. They're representing their own interests, just like that father Avi Shamriz explained. And so it's incumbent upon the Israelis to change course here, and they're almost there. So yes, the majority still support the war in Gaza, and that's very unfortunate. But there are also giant protests against Netanyahu. And there were giant protests around the hostages being killed. People are very angry about that. And the polling also shows that they definitely want to get rid of Netanyahu. But they've got to do it now. How many more Palestinians have to die? And Netanyahu says he's going to stay until the war is over. Well, that gives him an incentive to never end the war. And he says, oh, until we kill everyone in Hamas. Well, they claim they've killed 20% of Hamas. It's an outlandish claim. But even if you were to take that as true, Well, Jesus, you killed 20,000 civilians while you were killing 20% of Hamas. How many more civilians are going to kill? So no, in a parliamentary system, elections can be called in non-regular times. Israel has to change course and has to change leadership. They're capable of it, and you see wonderful Israeli citizens speaking out and fighting back. But we've got to get it over the hump until a majority say, no, we have to do peace and not endless war.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.